Well, Michael, here we are again with insights after all this time.
Yep, new company and everything.
Yeah. Yes, we're with Capstone Real Estate now. And Capstone, you kind of think of Capstone, I guess, as a spinoff of the Foundation Group. But let's start at the beginning. In 1977, John Downing formed Westlake Associates. And then in 2006, John and Bruce Kahn, who came from Marks and Millichap, formed the Foundation Group. And in 2013, John and Bruce dissolved their partnership. Bruce kept the Foundation Group, and John formed Capstone Commercial Real Estate. So in a sense, like it's all in the sort of all in the same family. Capstone is a spinoff of the Foundation Group. But today, this is apropos because we're going to be talking to the expert. Laura Schoneck is the site manager of a 22-unit in Wedgewood. And as I've often said, you guys, girls, excuse me, are the expert when it comes to apartment tenancy because you're in the trenches. You see it every day.
Yeah, Laura, and you've been interacting. You know, we sort of see some of this stuff from a 30,000-foot view, but you're boots on the ground on site constantly, and so you know we sort of look to you for different trends within what's going on in the rental market. Specifically, you know, what type of improvements seem to be popular at the moment? What are you doing on turnovers? And you know, if there's demographic shifts, how do you sort of factor that all in? And you've experienced a definitive shift in tenancy, you were saying, in tenancy demographics over the past 2 years. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. I think in 2019, we started noticing just the demographics slightly changing. I believe that was kind of the first year where there were more renters than there were homeowners. I think for the first time in I don't know what the actual 100 years, I think was the title in the news article I read. But we did start seeing a shift in that for sure. This particular neighborhood where we're at, Wedgewood, is just kind of just far enough away from the city that people still felt as if they were in the city. So we weren't hit too hard with losing a lot of tenants due to necessarily income issues or raising of rents. The one thing we did notice is a big shift of the age group. This particular building actually had, I would say at that time, it was almost 40% would have been over 50 and or retired. And that definitely shifted as rents had to increase just because of the way the neighborhood was growing, the upgrades that were being done to the building once Capstone did take over the building. And so we've seen it really shift. And then again, during COVID, the bigger shift was we really started just seeing a 35 and under crowd. And that would be a lot of single professional women and couples, not necessarily married couples, but couples in general.
I've heard that from other apartment managers as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Where did these 50 plus tenants go?
I think at that time as well, in this particular area, again, with the rent increases, but we also noticed that there were two more of the senior housing communities. One of them was in Bothell, so not too far from here. I think I believe it's like 7.5 miles away from Wedgewood proper, or northeast Seattle. And they're very competitive with their pricing at that point. And we did have several of the tenants that did leave. One of the tenants actually raised 3 children and had been here 30 years in this building. Professionals, they all went to the University of Washington, living in this neighborhood in a small apartment afforded them to do that. And once the rents were increasing and the amenities in certain buildings weren't really being kept up, and then all these wonderful senior homes coming up with very, comparable pricing, if not sometimes better, they decided to move on.
As one of the byproducts of COVID is more people, especially, I would say that's probably a nationwide thing, but in Seattle, you have a lot of tech workers who perhaps can work remotely. Are people looking for a different type unit now that they might be spending more time at home? A studio up on Capitol Hill might have been something that was extremely desirable when everything was still, the businesses were open and people weren't spending as much time in their apartments. But are they looking for different things in a rental unit at this point, do you think?
Yeah, we weren't able to keep up with the 2-bedroom needs. It appeared that a lot of people were looking for the 2-bedroom, so that 1 bedroom and their office.
Sure.
Knowing that they were going to be home. And I also feel that a lot of the folks that were living in the building at the time or since have moved in, that's exactly the demographic. They are young professionals and they work remotely. So they were also afforded just, I think, that extra time to kind of stop and think about what they needed, for their space, especially. Also being that downtown had closed down. So all those great and fun activities, there really wasn't anything there. And they decided to find a nice, quiet neighborhood, someplace they felt safe, and they definitely wanted 2 bedrooms. We had a surplus of 1 bedrooms going on for quite a few months, actually.
Tell us about the income of these new 35 and under tenants. You were saying it was their income is pretty strong.
They have really strong. I also feel that it's a neighborhood. People wanted to be where they felt like they were a little bit closer to home. They could walk outside, and I think they felt safer. But they're also saving. They're saving to be able to go ahead and purchase those homes, which we know is more and more difficult in this area. I've watched the prices rise in the last 4 years here, stabilize a little bit, but just in the homes. And, we would see for sale signs almost on every block. And, those would be scooped up within a week or two. And there's all of this demographic who had this money. They had a lot of income, and they wanted to start saving their money again. And so that $2,000, $3,000 apartment wasn't really looking like where they wanted to put their money. They wanted to find some place that was comfortable. They didn't care about the amenities. They weren't available to use anyway. And I think it just affords them more savings. So we have several very professional. I actually have a family of doctors that lives here in the building. I have several tenants that are in 6 figures. And talking earlier about the couples not necessarily married, but the combined incomes are in those 6 figures, which was very surprising to me because this is a very quaint building and quieter neighborhood.
So how long does a vacancy sit now before being filled?
Now in 20 or through 2021, or are we talking just right about now?
Now, when you get a vacancy, how generally how long does it take to fill it?
If the turn doesn't require much, it can go very quickly in this neighborhood. I usually can pre-lease using existing photos from the previous turn or renovation and have those ready to go right away. So that's not a problem in this particular area. Now that we're looking, again, we have to be a little bit more, competitive because, it has changed and it has shifted. And people are able to afford more and they are going back into the city. I lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay.
Well, on that competitive front, what obviously certain buildings have limitations. Something that was built in the a mid-century building isn't probably going to have a rooftop deck or anything like that. So what do you look for as far as improving your marketability? We talked about washer dryers the other day, which is something that people have been doing for a few years. But what else do you notice when you're going through a turn that has produced either a higher quality tenant or gotten you to rent the unit a little quicker than you usually would have?
Absolutely. And I think, too, going back to that first portion of it, we are now doing more extensive turns. So the apartment does remain vacant a little bit longer than it normally would. The one thing for us, and to your point, is that there are constrictions for some of these buildings, being that they are smaller and their plumbing's older. So it does take a lot in order to do that. So we're really trying to make sure our surfaces, the painting colors, there is a washer and dryer available. Things are updated. And again, right now, it's about the washer and dryer in the unit. That was a big request for a lot of people during COVID They were in these beautiful, shared buildings that didn't all have washers and dryers in the units, and those were the one things that people were really looking for.
So
they were looking to be self-contained. It is a big deal. Yeah. It is a big deal. For a small investment, if you think about it, it also just opened up that pool of tenants, waiting lists of people, asking for us to go ahead and give them a call if something came available. So they came and seen the building, and they really liked it. And they were just waiting to get into something a little bit more comfortable and I think more homey feeling, but had those amenities.
So assuming you don't have to do a lot of reconfiguring for plumbing, what does it generally cost an owner to put in a washer and dryer?
I think on the average here, just because it does, in the older buildings, we do have to be a little more thoughtful in that space and where we're going to take it from. You're looking at storage versus amenity. In that having that washer and dryer sometimes has to go into a closet. So it's definitely, depending upon the plumber and where you need, I think the average is about $3,000 to $3,500 for a small one-bedroom if you don't really have to move too much. But if we're looking at a contractor to come in and to adjust the space and rework a couple of walls or walls in between closets, taking linen closets, then that becomes a little bit more expensive. But it's definitely going to be around $4,000 or under. But I'd say the average is about $3,500.
So our time is just about up. Michael, can you think of any other questions you'd like to ask?
No, I think at this point you've given us a pretty comprehensive. I guess the only other thing I would ask, just to piggyback onto that last point. I mean, is there any other appliance within a unit that could make a difference? I mean, certainly the more you have, probably the easier it is to rent. But are dishwashers as valued as washer dryers, for instance?
Absolutely, they are, and especially in the older buildings. We're in a lot of these great neighborhoods. Green Lake, for instance, is just, across the way for us here in Wedgewood. And in a lot of those buildings, they don't have the washers and dryers, and they don't have the dishwashers. So that small upgrade actually generates, I think, a lot more gene pool, basically, if you want to put it that way, of tenants. There's just a bigger pool of tenants because they do want those amenities.
Okay.
So a dishwasher does make a big difference.
So the younger crowd coming in, or the young professional crowd, sort of expects that stuff at this point.
They do expect that. They've had it because, we were looking again to a lot of these tenants who were moving from downtown and had those amenities in the newer buildings. And so they wanted to maintain those, but they wanted to leave the city a little bit. And so, yes, so they were used to that and they wanted that, or they were living in a small, maybe charming studio on Capitol Hill, which, didn't have that. And they knew that they wanted that, especially if they're going to be spending more time at home, working from home. Just makes things much more comfortable.
One quick question, and then we'll wrap it up. Assuming we didn't have a moratorium, assuming you could raise rents, are we poised? Is the market ready for rent upticks at this point? What do you think?
I've already seen it. We've remained pretty stable here as far as pricing goes. We were one of the few buildings, we didn't really offer, a month free. We didn't really have to do that type of thing. I'm so sorry, you guys. I lost my train of thought again.
No, you're doing great.
You did wonderful.
I'm so sorry.
No, you did wonderful.
We
sprung this on you.
No, you didn't. It's just that today's been kind of wacky, and I really do apologize for that. I'm usually generally right on top of things. Anyway, so I apologize.
No apology necessary. You've been great, and we appreciate it. Lori Schoneck, who is the on-site manager of a 22-unit in Wedgewood. Michael, we are done with another podcast, and we will have another one as soon as something really important comes up in the market, which usually is every month or so.
Yeah. So feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions, need a building valuation, or just in general have some ideas for us on what you might like to hear about next.
And the phone numbers are the same. Use our cell phone for now. That's probably the best. My number is, Bob Wright, my number is 206-619-3274. Michael?
310 383-1570 is my cell phone. You can reach me on that anytime, day and evening.
Insights is the name of the program.